What would you do if you stood at the back of a packed church on your granddaughter's baptism day and watched your own son whisper something into the pastor's ear that made the man go white? I was standing right there, holding a gift bag with a tiny silver cross inside, when I saw it happen. My son leaned in close, said something I couldn't hear, and Pastor Williams stopped mid-sentence. His hands trembled. The congregation went silent. But what nobody in that church knew was that I had been waiting for that moment. I had planned for it. And when the screen behind the altar lit up and my son's voice filled the room, confessing everything he had done to his wife, to his children, to all of us, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. My name is Harold Mercer. I'm 67 years old. I spent 38 years as a fire chief in Ridgeport, Connecticut, a coastal town where everybody knows everybody and secrets don't stay buried for long. I retired 5 years ago after a knee surgery that told me my body had done enough. My wife, Dorothy, and I built a good life here. We raised 2 kids in a white colonial on Birchwood Lane, the kind of street where neighbors wave from their porches and kids ride bikes until the streetlights come on. Dorothy passed away 3 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. The doctors gave her 6 months, and she lasted 4. She spent her last weeks in our bedroom, looking out at the maple tree she had planted the year we moved in. I held her hand when she went. She squeezed once, then nothing. I still talk to her sometimes. I sit in the kitchen with my morning coffee and tell her about the weather, about the garden, about whatever nonsense is on the news. I know she can't hear me, but it helps. After Dorothy died, the house got quiet, too quiet. I filled my days with small projects. Fixed the fence, repainted the garage, volunteered at the fire station teaching young recruits. Anything to keep from sitting still, because when I sat still, the silence pressed in, and I thought about everything I had lost. I have 2 children. My daughter, Karen, lives in Portland, Oregon, with her husband and 3 kids. She calls every Sunday. She's steady, reliable, kind. She got that from her mother. My son, Mitchell, is 39. He lives 20 minutes away in the newer part of town, a subdivision called Stonebridge Estates, where the houses all look the same and the lawns are suspiciously green. Mitchell was always the charming one. Class president, varsity baseball, the kind of kid who could talk his way out of any trouble and into any room. People loved him. Teachers adored him. Girls followed him around like he was made of light. But charm, I learned over the years, is not the same thing as character. Mitchell had a habit of bending the truth. Small things at first. He told his mother he made the honor roll when he hadn't. He told me he got a summer job when he was really spending his days at the beach. As he got older, the lies got bigger. He borrowed money from Dorothy's sister and never paid it back. He got fired from his first real job for falsifying expense reports, but told us he quit. He crashed my truck and blamed it on a parking lot hit and run. I found the paint transfer on a guardrail 2 blocks from the house. Dorothy always said Mitchell would grow out of it. She said he just needed time, maturity, the right woman to settle him down. I wanted to believe her. God knows I wanted to believe her. Then he met Serena. Serena Whitfield came from old money, the kind of family that had buildings named after them at the local university. Her father, Richard Whitfield, had built a commercial real estate empire before he died of a heart attack 10 years ago. He left everything in a family trust managed by Serena's mother, who passed 2 years later. By the time Serena turned 30, she was the sole trustee of the Whitfield Family Trust, worth somewhere north of $4 million. She was also one of the kindest, most genuine people I had ever met. Serena was a pediatric nurse at Ridgeport General. She worked 12-hour shifts caring for sick children, then came home and volunteered at the community food pantry on weekends. She had soft brown eyes and a laugh that could fill a room. When Dorothy was dying, Serena was the one who drove 40 minutes each way to sit with her 3 times a week. She held Dorothy's hand. She read to her. She changed her sheets and brushed her hair when I was too exhausted to do it myself. Dorothy loved Serena. 2 days before she died, Dorothy grabbed my wrist and pulled me close. "Take care of that girl," she whispered. "She deserves better than what life has given her." I didn't fully understand what Dorothy meant then. I do now. Mitchell and Serena got married 4 years ago, in a ceremony at St. Matthew's Church. It was a beautiful wedding. Serena wore her mother's dress. Mitchell cried during his vows, and everyone said it was the most romantic thing they had ever seen. I stood at the altar as his best man and thought, maybe Dorothy was right. Maybe Serena was exactly what Mitchell needed. They had 2 children quickly. Emma, now 3, and baby Noah, born just 8 months ago. I adored those kids. I drove over every Wednesday and Saturday to see them. I'd get on the floor with Emma and build block towers. I'd hold Noah in the rocking chair by the window and sing the same lullabies I once sang to Mitchell and Karen. Those afternoons kept me going after Dorothy died. They gave the silence a purpose. But about 6 months ago, I started noticing things that didn't sit right. Serena began losing weight. Not gradually, the way people do when they're busy with 2 small kids. Rapidly. Her cheeks hollowed out. Her scrubs hung loose on her frame. She moved slower, like every step cost her something. She started calling in sick to work, something she had never done in 12 years of nursing. I asked her about it one Saturday while Mitchell was out running errands. We were sitting on the back patio. Emma was chasing butterflies in the yard and Noah was asleep in his carrier. "You don't look well," I said carefully. "Have you been to the doctor?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "It's just exhaustion, Dad. 2 kids under 4. You know? I'm not sleeping much. Mitchell says I need to stop worrying so much, that I'm making myself sick with anxiety." She had started calling me Dad about a year after the wedding. It happened naturally, without discussion. One day it was Harold. The next it was Dad. It meant more to me than I could say, especially after Dorothy was gone. But something about the way she said, "Mitchell says," bothered me. There was a flatness in her voice, a resignation, like she was repeating a script she had memorized. The following Wednesday, I arrived at their house unannounced. I usually called ahead, but I had been at the hardware store nearby and figured I would surprise Emma with the stuffed rabbit I had found. The front door was unlocked. I let myself in and heard Mitchell's voice coming from the kitchen. He was on the phone, his back to me, leaning against the counter. "No, she signed it last week," he said. "The amendment gives me co-trustee status. Once the second amendment goes through, I'll have full authority. The lawyer says another 2 months, maybe 3. She won't even notice. She can barely keep her eyes open half the day." He laughed. It was a sound I recognized from his teenage years, the laugh he used when he thought he was getting away with something. I backed out quietly and drove home. That night, I sat in the kitchen with Dorothy's empty chair across from me and tried to make sense of what I had heard. Trust amendments, co-trustee status, full authority, and that comment about Serena not being able to keep her eyes open. I told myself there might be an innocent explanation. Maybe Serena had asked Mitchell to help manage the trust. Maybe she was too tired with the kids to handle the paperwork. Maybe I was an old man looking for problems where there weren't any. But I had spent 38 years running into burning buildings. I knew what smoke looked like. And this was smoke. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched. Mitchell pour Serena's tea every morning, insisting she drink a special herbal blend he ordered online for postpartum recovery. I watched him hand her a daily supplement, a small capsule he said the naturopath recommended for her energy levels. I watched how he controlled her schedule, her phone, her contact with friends. Her college roommate, Vanessa, told me later that Serena hadn't returned her calls in 4 months. Mitchell always answered, saying Serena was sleeping or wasn't feeling up to talking. I watched Serena deteriorate. She developed tremors in her hands. She had trouble concentrating, losing track of conversations mid-sentence. She fell asleep, sitting upright at the dinner table. One afternoon, I found her sitting on the bathroom floor, confused, unable to remember how she got there. Mitchell's explanation was always the same: postpartum depression, anxiety, hormonal imbalance. She needs rest. She'll get better. But she wasn't getting better. She was getting worse. On a Thursday morning in January, while Mitchell was at work and Serena was sleeping upstairs. I went into their kitchen and found the supplement bottle Mitchell kept in the cabinet above the stove. The label said, Herbal Energy Complex, manufactured by some company I had never heard of. I took 3 capsules and put the bottle back exactly where I found it. Then I called my old friend, George Nakamura. George had been the department's arson investigator before he retired and went to work for a private forensics lab in Hartford. If anyone could tell me what was in those capsules, George could. George, I said, I need a favor. No questions asked. George paused. Harold, the last time you said no questions asked, I ended up testifying in front of a grand jury. This is different. This is family. He agreed to run the analysis. I drove the capsules to his lab that afternoon and waited. 2 days later, George called me back. His voice was different, serious in a way I hadn't heard in years. Harold, he said, where did you get these? Just tell me what's in them. The primary active compound is a benzodiazepine derivative, a sedative, not a standard prescription. Either. This is something compounded, custom-made. Whoever made this designed it to be taken daily in small doses. Over weeks or months, it would cause drowsiness, confusion, memory loss, muscle weakness, tremors. Long-term use could cause organ damage. It mimics symptoms of severe depression, chronic fatigue, even early-onset dementia. The room tilted. My hands gripped the edge of the counter. Are you telling me this could make someone appear mentally incompetent? George was quiet for a moment. That's exactly what I'm telling you. If someone was taking this daily for 6 months, they would deteriorate to a point where a doctor could reasonably diagnose cognitive decline. A court could appoint a guardian. A family member could petition for conservatorship. Conservatorship. Control of finances. Control of the trust. I understood now. Mitchell wasn't just stealing from Serena. He was dismantling her from the inside. He was erasing her mind so he could take everything she had. And when it was done, she would be too broken to fight back, too confused to even know what had happened. My son was destroying his wife, slowly, deliberately, and he was doing it in front of his own children. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my study with George's lab report in my hands and thought about what to do. I wanted to call the police immediately. Every instinct screamed at me to pick up the phone and end it. But I had learned something in 38 years of emergency response. You don't rush in blind. You assess the situation. You make a plan. You execute precisely. Because if you move too fast, people get hurt. If I called the police now, Mitchell would lawyer up immediately. He was smart. He would destroy evidence. With Serena in her current state, confused, forgetful, unable to articulate clearly, who would believe her? Mitchell had spent months building a narrative. The worried husband, the devoted father, the man desperately trying to help his sick wife. If I moved before I had everything, he would slip through the cracks like smoke through a screen door. I needed more. I needed everything. The next morning, I called Patricia Hoffman, a retired attorney who had handled Dorothy's estate. She had been Dorothy's college roommate, and the sharpest legal mind I knew. Patricia, I said, I need help. What I'm about to tell you is going to sound insane. When I finished, she was silent for a long time. Then she said, How soon can you get to my office? We met that afternoon and laid out a strategy. Patricia would investigate the trust amendments Mitchell had mentioned. Together, we would build a case so airtight that Mitchell couldn't talk his way out of it. Within a week, Patricia uncovered the truth about the trust. Mitchell had hired a lawyer in New Haven, someone outside the family's usual circle, to draft amendments to the Whitfield Family Trust. The First Amendment, already signed by Serena, added Mitchell as co-trustee with equal authority. The Second Amendment, not yet signed, would give Mitchell sole control and remove Serena entirely. Attached to the Second Amendment was a letter from a doctor I had never heard of, stating that Serena was suffering from cognitive decline and was no longer capable of managing complex financial decisions. The doctor's name was Alan Bryce. Patricia did some digging. Dr. Bryce had been disciplined twice by the state medical board for fraudulent documentation. Mitchell was paying him cash. We found the receipts. Meanwhile, I started recording. I bought a small digital recorder and kept it in my jacket pocket every time I visited their house. Over 3 weeks, I captured 17 separate conversations. Mitchell on the phone with the New Haven lawyer. We need the Second Amendment signed before she gets any worse. If she deteriorates too much, we'll need a competency hearing. And that takes longer. Mitchell, talking to a woman I didn't recognize. Her voice was low, intimate. Soon, baby, once the trust is transferred, we sell the house, liquidate everything. I'm thinking Scottsdale. Dry heat. Fresh start. The kids can stay with my father. He loves playing grandpa. That one made me grip the recorder so hard I thought it would crack. A woman. Another woman. And he was planning to dump his children on me while he ran off with their mother's money. I found out her name 2 days later. Rachel Dunn, 31 years old. She worked at a real estate office in the next town. I watched Mitchell meet her at a restaurant on a Tuesday night. Watched them hold hands across the table. Watched him kiss her in the parking lot while his wife sat, drugged and confused at home with their babies. The hardest part was going back to that house every Wednesday and Saturday and pretending I didn't know. Sitting across from Mitchell at dinner and making small talk while my blood boiled. But I did it because Serena needed me to. Every visit, I switched out a few of Mitchell's capsules with vitamin E gel caps that looked identical. I did it gradually, 1 or 2 at a time, so he wouldn't notice the bottle emptying faster than expected. And slowly, just like with the pills coming out, Serena started coming back. The change was subtle at first. She held Noah without her hands shaking. She remembered the name of Emma's preschool teacher. She stayed awake through an entire dinner for the first time in months. Color returned to her face. Her eyes cleared. One Saturday afternoon, while Mitchell was out, Serena looked at me across the kitchen table with an expression I hadn't seen in months. Clarity. "Dad," she said quietly, "something has been wrong with me, and I don't think it's what Mitchell says it is. I know, sweetheart." I sat down beside her. "I know everything, and I'm going to fix it." I told her the truth. All of it. The drugging. The trust amendments. Rachel Dunn. The fake doctor. She didn't cry. She just sat very still. Her hands flat on the table. And breathed. Then she looked at me with eyes that were fierce and steady, and said, "What do we do?" We had Noah's baptism scheduled for March 15th at St. Matthew's Church. Mitchell had planned it himself, wanting a big public event. He had invited his colleagues, his friends, half the neighborhood. He wanted to perform the role of devoted father in front of everyone, while his wife slowly disappeared beside him. I decided to let him have his audience. Patricia and I spent 2 weeks preparing. We compiled everything into a presentation. George's lab analysis of the capsules, the trust amendment documents, the recordings, Mitchell's search history that Patricia's investigator had obtained through legal channels, searches for sedatives that mimic dementia, how to establish conservatorship, Scottsdale, Arizona real estate, and offshore bank accounts, photographs of Mitchell and Rachel together spanning 4 months. I contacted Detective Luis Garza at the Ridgeport Police Department. I had known Garza for 20 years. He had been a rookie when I was chief. I trusted him completely. He reviewed our evidence, coordinated with the district attorney, and arranged for officers to be present at the church. The morning of the baptism, I woke up before dawn. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and straightened my tie. I looked at the man staring back. 67 years old, gray hair, tired eyes, hands that had pulled people from burning buildings and held his dying wife. Today, those hands would save his daughter-in-law and his grandchildren. I arrived at St. Matthew's early. Patricia was already there with the technical team. A screen and projector set up behind the altar, disguised as part of the church's usual multimedia setup. Detective Garza confirmed his team was in position. Serena was at the house with both children, a trusted friend standing by to bring her to the church at the right moment. Guests began arriving at 10. Mitchell worked the room like a politician, shaking hands, slapping backs, laughing that golden laugh. He wore a navy suit and held baby Noah in one arm while guiding Emma with the other. The picture of fatherhood. Serena stood beside him in a pale blue dress, smiling when spoken to, nodding when expected. She looked better than she had in months, but she was performing. Same as him. Only she was performing for a different reason. The service began. Pastor Williams welcomed everyone. He spoke about new beginnings, about God's grace, about the sacred responsibility of raising a child in faith and truth. The irony was almost unbearable. Mitchell stood at the front holding Noah. He recited the baptismal promises with practiced sincerity. Do you promise to raise this child in the light of God's love? I do. Do you reject evil in all its forms? I do. I watched from the third row and said nothing. After the water was poured and the blessings were spoken, Mitchell stepped forward. He had prepared remarks. Of course he had. I just want to thank everyone for being here today, he said, his voice warm and steady. Being a father is the greatest gift of my life. Serena and I are so blessed to have Emma and Noah, and to have a community like this supporting us. He looked at Serena with an expression of manufactured tenderness. And I want to thank my beautiful wife for everything she does for our family. She's the strongest woman I know. Serena smiled. Only I could see the steel behind it. Mitchell continued for another minute, thanking Pastor Williams, thanking his colleagues, thanking me. He even wiped his eye. Then he sat down, satisfied with his performance. This is the moment I stood up. Excuse me, Pastor. I'm sorry to interrupt. Pastor Williams looked at me, surprised. Harold, I walked to the front of the church. My knee ached with every step, but I didn't care. I turned to face 200 people, and my son, Mitchell's smile faltered. Dad, what are you doing? I looked at him for a long moment. Then I said, I have something to show everyone. Something about the man who just stood here and talked about fatherhood and blessings and love. Patricia pressed the remote. The screen behind the altar came to life. My recorded voice filled the church. My name is Harold Mercer. I'm a retired fire chief. I've spent my life protecting people, and today I'm here to protect my daughter-in-law and my grandchildren from the person who should have protected them most. The presentation was methodical. I had organized it the way I used to organize fire investigations. Facts first, then evidence, then conclusions. The lab report appeared on screen. George's analysis. Benzodiazepine derivative. Sedative compound. Administered daily via capsule. Photographs of the supplement bottle. Close-ups of the capsules. George's written statement confirming the contents were dangerous and consistent with intentional poisoning. People started murmuring. Someone in the back stood up. Then the recordings played. Mitchell's voice, clear and unmistakable, talking to the New Haven lawyer about the trust, talking to Rachel Dunn about Scottsdale and selling the house, talking about his children, like luggage to be stored. The kids can stay with my father. He loves playing grandpa. 200 people heard my son plan the theft of his wife's inheritance while slowly drugging her into incompetence. The church erupted. People were standing, shouting. Mitchell's colleagues were staring at him in horror. His neighbors were pulling out their phones. Someone was crying. Mitchell jumped to his feet. This is insane. He's lying. That recording is fake. He's been confused lately. He doesn't know what he's... His voice broke when he saw the next slide. Photographs. Him and Rachel at the restaurant, holding hands, kissing in the parking lot. Time-stamped, dated, undeniable. The final recording played. Mitchell and Rachel, their voices intimate and conspiratorial. Once the trust is transferred, we sell the house, liquidate everything. I'm thinking Scottsdale. Dry heat. Fresh start. The screen went dark. Then one final image appeared. The forged medical letter from Dr. Alan Bryce, declaring Serena mentally incompetent, beside records showing cash payments from Mitchell to Dr. Bryce, totaling $18,000. White text appeared at the bottom of the screen. Serena Mercer is not sick. Serena Mercer was poisoned by her husband. And Serena Mercer is here today, clear-minded and ready to speak for herself. The side door of the church opened. Serena walked in. She moved with purpose, her shoulders back, her eyes sharp and focused. She looked healthy, strong, awake. The woman who had been fading away for 6 months stood before that congregation, and there was no confusion in her gaze, no tremor in her hands, just clarity and quiet fury. She walked straight to the front and faced Mitchell. "I trusted you," she said. Her voice was steady and carried to every corner of the room. "I gave you my love. I gave you my children. I gave you access to everything I had. And you poisoned me. You drugged me every single day and watched me disappear. And you told me I was crazy. You told me it was in my head. You let me believe I was losing my mind while you stole my future and planned to throw me away." Mitchell opened his mouth, but no words came out. Detective Garza appeared at the main entrance. 2 uniformed officers flanked him. Mitchell saw them, and his face collapsed. "Mitchell Mercer," Garza said, "you're under arrest. Conspiracy to administer a controlled substance. Financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Fraud. Forgery. You have the right to remain silent." The officers moved forward. Mitchell tried to back away, but there was nowhere to go. They cuffed him in front of the altar where, minutes earlier, he had baptized his son and talked about God's love. As they led him past my pew, Mitchell looked at me. His eyes were wild, panicked, furious. "You did this," he hissed. "My own father." I looked back at him and said nothing. There was nothing left to say. Rachel Dunn was arrested at her apartment that afternoon. That was 11 months ago. Mitchell is awaiting trial. His lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the district attorney refused. The evidence is too overwhelming. Patricia tells me he's looking at 8 to 12 years. Maybe more. Serena recovered fully within 2 months of stopping the capsules. Her doctors confirmed that the prolonged sedation had caused no permanent damage, though they said another few months might have caused irreversible cognitive decline. We caught it just in time. After the arrest, I asked Serena and the kids to move into the house on Birchwood Lane. I told her it was practical, that she needed support with 2 small children, but the truth is, I needed them as much as they needed me. The house isn't quiet anymore. Emma runs through the hallways in her socks, sliding on the hardwood floors Dorothy used to polish every Saturday. Noah is crawling now, pulling himself up on every piece of furniture, leaving tiny fingerprints on everything he touches. I don't wipe them off. Serena went back to work at the hospital 3 months ago. She's also started volunteering with a legal aid organization, helping women recognize financial abuse in their marriages. She says she wants to make sure no one else has to lose themselves the way she almost did. Last month, she asked me to adopt her. Not the children. Her. She wanted to be my daughter. Legally. Officially. Permanently. I told her she had been my daughter since the day she called me Dad. We filed the papers anyway. Dorothy would have wanted it done properly. On a cool evening last week, I sat in the kitchen with my coffee. Emma was coloring at the table. Noah was babbling in his high chair, smearing applesauce on his face. Serena was at the stove making the chicken soup recipe I had taught her. Dorothy's recipe, the one with rosemary and too much garlic. "Tell me a story, Grandpa," Emma said without looking up from her drawing. "What kind of story?" "A brave one," she said. "About someone who helps people." I looked at Serena. She caught my eye and smiled. It was the same smile I remembered from before. Warm and real and full of light. The smile Mitchell had tried to erase. "Once upon a time," I said, "there was a fireman who was very old and very tired, but he had a family that he loved more than anything in the world. And when that family was in danger, he wasn't tired anymore." Emma kept coloring. Noah smacked the high chair tray. Serena stirred the soup. The house on Birchwood Lane was full again, full of noise and mess and laughter and love. Dorothy's maple tree stood in the yard, its branches bare in the winter cold. waiting for spring. It would bloom again. It always did. I don't regret what I did. I don't regret exposing Mitchell in front of everyone he had ever tried to impress. I don't regret watching him led away in handcuffs at his own son's baptism. Some people might say a father should never turn on his own child, but I say a father's first duty is to protect the innocent. And when your own child becomes the danger, you don't look away. You act. Dorothy told me once that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision that something matters more than fear. Serena and those children mattered more. They will always matter more. So if you're listening to this and you recognize something in this story, if someone you love is fading and the explanations don't add up, if your gut is telling you something is wrong, even when everyone around you says it's fine, trust that instinct. Don't wait. Don't hope it gets better on its own. Don't let loyalty to blood blind you to what's right. Because family isn't defined by who shares your last name. Family is defined by who you're willing to fight for. And the people worth fighting for are the ones who would do the same for you. Thank you for staying with me until the end. I know this wasn't easy to hear. If this story moved you, leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching from. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you've ever had to make an impossible choice to protect someone you love, I'd like to hear your story too. Please note this story contains fictionalized elements created for storytelling and educational purposes. Any resemblance to real people or events is coincidental. If this type of content isn't for you, feel free to explore other videos. We respect your choice. God bless you all.